When President Rodrigo Duterte assumed office in 2016, he set his sights on the ambitious goal of bringing in a golden age of Philippine infrastructure. Under the Build, Build, Build program, the grand plan to build new roads, bridges, ports, railways, and runways seems almost impossible. The task fell on the hands of an old friend the president knew he could rely on. On Profiles, we get to know the man with a plan, Transportation Secretary Tugade, who now holds the blueprint of the country's future transport infrastructure. Much like his longtime friend and law school contemporary, Rodrigo Duterte, Secretary Tugade is a tough-talking guy who doesn't mince words. His is an honesty and toughness honed by a life of hard knocks. Secretary, you had quite a tough childhood. Can you tell us about that?
My parents moved to Manila. We're just ordinary government employees. My mother was a clerk at the Bureau of Public Works. And my father was a clerk at the Bureau of Highways. Food was a struggle. Even sleeping was a struggle. When you sleep, may lalabas na surot yan, gagapang-gapang eh. Papatay mo lang, tulog ka ulit. Pag umulan, baha. In Delgado, it was on top of estero, separating a wall with the University of Manila. Doon ko kami nakatira noon.
Eventually, you moved to Tatalon.
Kung struggle yung yung Sampaloc, crucifixion yung Tatalon. Kung maliligo ka, pwedeng maligo ka na sa poso or iuwi mo. Eh bakit iuwi mo pa? Di maligo ka na lang sa poso. What we had then was a hall. Doon ka magdudumi. And it was a crucifying life.
Yeah.
But then, life must move on. My siblings did not allow that hardship to be an obstacle. We challenge ourselves so that time will come in the future, no longer will we be staying in places like those.
He had exemplary role models in his parents who struggled to make ends meet and reminded their children constantly of the value of hard work and honesty.
Mamang will always say, pag hindi sa'yo, wag mong pakialaman. That value of honesty permeated in my system, hard work, honesty. Bit-bitin mo yan, may laban ka na sa mundo.
His natural ability in academics earned him a scholarship at San Beda College.
Scholarship ho yan, from grade 1 ako hanggang pagtatapos ng law. I had to maintain a certain required standard grade to maintain that rating. Nag-aral naman ako. Kung wala San Beda, wala ako dito ngayon.
While in San Beda, he discovered he had a knack for argumentation when he defended his own case against a school policy that would have put an end to his scholarship.
We have a rule, if you leave the abbey, you leave the school. Hindi ko na kayanan, after 2 years, nag-aasma ako noon eh. Masabi nila sa akin, lumabas ka na. Bakit ganyan? Hindi ko naman kasalanan to. I argued my case.
Yeah.
I was the first postulant na paglabas, pinayagang mag-aral and to continue with the scholarship. From that moment in time, I said, I think I'll be a good lawyer.
His legal prowess was proven again when he argued and won a case against the demolition of their home in Tatalon.
Pumunta ako sa husgado. Totoo yan, hindi pa naman ako abogado. Sabi ko, bakit ba demolish na demolish? I argued the case. So I was able to stay the demolition at that time. I told myself, pwede ako maging abogado.
He always wants to win. Winning is probably his goal all the time. Debates in school, he was the leader, he was the captain of the debating team, and we always won. He doesn't take no as an answer because there's always another option.
It was during his days as a promising young law school student that President Duterte became a trusted friend.
Doon sa College of Law, may mga grouping yan eh. Grouping ng mga mayaman, grouping ng probinsya, at grouping ng wala. Normally, nagsasama yung sa probinsya sa kayong wala. Hindi ko kaya magbaon eh. Siya, sinishare niya yung baon. Protective siya sa grupo namin. Sa grupo, marami nagpo-protect, pero siya talagang excelling in protecting that group.
He passed his law school courses with flying colors, graduating cum laude despite juggling schoolwork with his first job at Delgado Brothers Incorporated, an international logistics company. He would eventually work his way up from executive assistant to company president. The young Art had beaten the odds, gotten out of a life of poverty, and was on the path to success.
In whatever you do, the greater the conflict, the more glorious is the triumph. It becomes not only a successful thing, but more importantly, it becomes an opportunity for golden memories. Malala mo yung istorya ng Spartacus and the Gladiator? I have to replicate that experience to the boardroom and say, I will make you corporate gladiator.
Despite resistance from her reputable and well-to-do family, Art married the girl of his dreams. From then on, his professional and family life began to take shape, each milestone represented by the names of his 5 children.
Yung panganay, Pilar Luz Barry. She was convinced when I was ready to take the bar. If I fail the bar, that name will be an ignominy. But if I pass the bar, then that name will always be a glory.
Yes.
It added a challenge on my end to make sure that I pass. The other is Mark Perry. Because during that time when Mark Perry was conceived, begotten, and born, I was starting to make good money.
Yes.
Yung anak ko, markadong pera. Yung pangatlo is Paul Louis Tugade. Paul is Pope Paul. Louis is St. Louis, Missouri. That was my first trip ever to the United States as a group study exchange, and my first speech was in St. Louis. That part of my life will not be forgotten. Jose Arturo, yung telenovela no na Dynasty.
Of course.
Yung JR.
JR. Kontrabida.
So, yung kontrabida, si JR. Gusto ko magkaroon ng junior, coined a name, Jose Arturo. So, JR. Yung huli is Finina Marie Tugade. Kung may junior ako, dapat may junior din yung asawa ko. Ang pangalan niya, Maria Soledad. Bakit Finina? Because we have made a pact with my wife na
Tama na.
last na.
His career seemed to be on a swift upward trajectory until a tragedy struck that would stop him in his tracks. His eldest son, Mark Perry, died of asthma complications. It's very heartbreaking that your son, Mark Perry, at 11 years old, he passed away.
Yes. God gave me a wake-up call. Kinuha niya si Perry. Markadong pera yan. Ang daming pera pumapasok eh. So I was paying attention and I was obsessed to making more money. And so it has dawned on me that I lost my son. Para bang sinasabi niya, Dad, will you please pay attention now to my siblings? Dad, will you please pay attention now to my mom? I gave them more attention. As a husband to my wife and as a father to my children.
When I first saw them after hearing my brother's death, they were very broken. And it became a drive for him as a father to bring us closer together. It was a drive for him to my mom to be of utmost support to her losing a child.
Art made sure that Mark Perry would never be forgotten.
Nagtayo ako ng kumpanya. I called it Perry's Group of Company. The name Mark Perry continued to be Markadong Pera.
He built the conglomerate from the ground up, turning an 8-man operation into a company of almost 400 employees. He believes that the success of the company comes from the culture shared by its people, whom he proudly calls his corporate gladiators.
Malala mo yung istorya ng Spartacus and the Gladiator? I have to replicate that experience to the boardroom and say, I will make you corporate gladiator. And therefore, you must follow the following discipline. Be punctual and on time. Don't assign people to do jobs which you cannot personally do. You have to be role models. Ang chismoso pang impyerno, ang intrigero pang kalaboso. In everything and anything you do, you must always take the extra mile. That is your way of doing things.
This tough stand spilled over to how he disciplined his children, arming them with the weapons and tools for success.
He really truly believed in the discipline of hard work. For him, that value of authoring your own work and putting in the time. Banat buto is part yan ng, pagpapalaki sa amin.
The first time that I won't ever forget is I finally got a meeting with him. This is for one of my small businesses, right? Except I was late, like 15 minutes late. And I had a business partner at that time. He waited for us to come in, and he stood up and he laughed. And then he didn't meet with us. It was only when I got home he told me that, as your father, I'm going to tell you that if you want to do business, you have to be on time. I gave you time, you didn't come in on time, I'm not going to give it to you again.
The greatest legacy that my dad would be leaving and for the company is the culture and the ways of doing things. No? There has to be malasakit in everything that you do. You have to be the best in anything that you do. Most importantly, his constant message is take care of the people.
It wasn't long before Art handed over the reins of the company to his capable children and moved on to what would be his greatest challenge yet, government. From 2012 to 2016, he was president of the state-owned Clark Development Corporation until his loyalty to an old and dear friend prompted him to leave his post.
While I was serving as president of CDC,
Clark Development Corporation.
Duterte decided to run. Alam ko yung pagmamahal niya sa bayan at alam ko yung pag-iisip niya pag gusto niyang gawin. Number 5 siya out of the 4. Resign ako. I will campaign for the man.
He stayed close to the presidential Rodrigo Duterte from the outset of his presidential bid. Believing that he was still far behind in the race, the possibility of being part of a Duterte administration was farthest from Art's mind.
Kala ko matatalo eh. Nanalo.
Napasuko kayo.
Sa kabinete. Binitawan ko yung pananalita. Naniniwala ko sa kanya. Dito ako.
You're back.
That's why I am in government.
As Secretary of the Department of Transportation, one of his first moves was to transfer the Manila-based central office to Clark, Pampanga. The new Department of Transportation headquarters sits comfortably within the wide open expanse of the Clark Economic Zone. Tell me about some of the habits. What were the first things you wanted to change?
I wanted to change the perceptions in government. Tingin sa mga tao ng gobyerno is walang piling, mayabang. Sabi ko, baguhin ko yan. Tayo na sa gobyerno, we are here to serve, not to be served. We are here to work for the people, We are not here to work for ourselves. That must be the concept of being in government.
The friendly environment at the central office is a welcome change from our usual impression of a government office. The first thing visitors notice when they enter is Art's pet project, a flourishing vegetable garden tended by Pampanga's indigenous community.
Gusto ko magkaroon ng paradigm na kung saan isipin nila na pag may lupa, pwede magkaroon ka ng pagkain.
By introducing new ways of doing things, Art is on a mission to usher in a new and even stronger culture within the department, with the kind of mindset needed to get his plans off the ground.
Pag may kultura yung tao, magkaroon ng programa, may kultura, ikasal mo yun, may laban.
Yes.
Diyan pinanganak yung mga tinatawag na ambitious project. Nandiyan dyan yung rails, nandiyan dyan yung subway, nandiyan dyan yung mga airport. Sama-sama na kami, pinagbuklod-buklod kami ng kultura. Kaya napanganak yung mga proyekto.
His excitement is palpable when he talks about plans for the country's first subway line.
This equipment will be the principal equipment that will be used in our construction of the subway. Ito ho yung pupunta sa ilalim na kung saan ibobor at gagawa ng tunnel.
7 meters in diameter.
7 meters ang diameter nito.
The order to design and build the country's future transport infrastructure.
Ma'am,
Sabi nila mission impossible daw.
O talaga, ma'am, we do not have the luxury of time.
Yeah.
Kaya pinanganak ko yung konseptong partial operability. Ibig sabihin, huwag mong tapusin, huwag mong hangarin na matapos yung proyekto para mo magamit. Matapos mo to, umpisahan mo nang gamitin. So, when you introduce that, maganda. Paano mo matatapos? We introduce a concept. 24/7 ang trabaho para matapos. Yan din ho yung susi ng administrasyon Duterte. We want a culture of peace and order. And more importantly, let's give the Filipino a comfortable life. I play with my grandchildren. That is the greatest unwinding that I'm doing now.
Art is no stranger to the commuter's daily struggle in the chaos of Metro Manila's streets. After all, he's relied on public transport for a good part of his life, claiming that he has never even driven a car.
Nasubukan kong sumabit sa estribo. Alam ko yung naaamoy mo at close up yung pawis nung katabi mo. Nakikita ko rin yung mga nangchachancing.
Yeah.
I have experience in a very unequivocal trying experiences how it is to ride in public transport system. Sabi ko, kailangan komportable yung bus. Kailangan komportable yung jeepney. Kailangan hindi nakatayo lahat. Kailangan pag upo mo sa likod ng jeepney, hindi mo hinihigop at inaamoy yung ismag na lumalabas na usok.
And we see
yung
the
anak
daily
ko,
struggle.
namatayan dahil may asma. Kaya ayaw ko ng continued pollution. Ayaw ko mamatayan sa inyo. Mabigat at masakit yun.
His marching orders from the president was to build the country's transport infrastructure. Taking this mandate to heart, Secretary Art Tugade is building roads, ports, runways, and railways to get Filipinos to their destinations with ease and speed. At the construction site of Clark International Airport's newest terminal, he gave us a glimpse of his vision of a modern transport system.
Itatanim namin yung punla, the seeds of having a modernized transport system. Gagawa kami ng roadmap, 30 years roadmap to address the transport system. Nag-uumpisa yan to modernize the transport system.
Bakit nila mamadali na tatanggalan nila ng trabaho ang ilang daang libong mga drivers natin?
Despite resistance from public transport groups calling his actions anti-poor, he's moving ahead with his plans to modernize jeepneys and trains, guided by the belief that public transportation should be a viable option across all socio-economic classes.
Bakit napabayaan yung jeepney? Bakit napabayaan yung bus? Because we had the paradigm that yung jeepney at the bus pang mahirap.
Yeah.
Ang gusto ko, yung jeepney saka yung bus, yung public transport system is an equalizer. Gagamitin mo at gagamitin ko at gagamitin ng lahat. You can have a successful integrated transport system kung hindi sineseparate yung mahirap at mayaman. Can we all do this in 6 years? No, but we can start doing it.
In the midst of criticism that his big plans are running late, he's unfazed in his campaign to rehabilitate and expand the country's railway infrastructure from 77 to 1,900 kilometers by 2020, and only asks for patience.
Ambagan nyo kami ng konting pasensya. Dagdagan mo na yung pasensya ng tiwala because may Pangulo tayo na nagsabing dapat gawin yan at gagawin ho namin. We have a facility that will interconnect with the train facility which we will construct. This facility, by schedule, will be completed by June of next year.
Correct.
Fully operational by the last quarter of next year. The Philippines is an archipelago.
Yeah.
Being an archipelago, you have to have integrated transport system.
Yes.
A basket of transportation system. Kaya nga ba't nandiyan dyan yung riles, yung aeroplano, yung barko, saka yung kalsada.
He's the first to admit that these grand plans cannot be achieved by the Philippine government on its own. Under the Build program,
Under the
maraming
Build, Build
ang partnerships ngayon with China and Chinese establishments. At marami rin concern, I guess they're wary na maraming proyekto na bibigay sa kanya. Anong masasabi niyo dito?
Para bang ang pinaparating natin, China lang ang kadil natin. Pumunta ho tayo sa riles. Andiyan dyan yung China, andiyan dyan yung Japan. LRT Extension 1, yung nag-supply ng mga coaches, Castilla, CAF. Yung nag-supply ng coaches na matatanggap natin ito July sa PNR, Indonesian. So para bang pag binabato nila, inchik, okay yun na inchik, pero hindi lang sila, marami po sila. Yung mga ibang countries has trust and faith in the Philippines. That is why they are offering their hands in partnership.
Yes. The Duterte administration's pivot towards China is just one of many criticisms Art has had to address in defense of the president. It must be a challenge working with someone. Siyempre, maraming criticism. He can be very divisive.
This is one of the favorite quotations of the president in relation to criticisms. If I were to try to read, much less answered all the attacks made on me, this shop might as well be closed for any other business. I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep doing so until the end. If the end brings me out all right, what is said against me won't amount to anything. If the end brings me out wrong, 10 angels swearing I was right would make no difference. We will be guided by our own mandate, by our own mission, by our own conscience.
At 72, this multi-awarded executive and businessman turned public servant is still intent on putting in the long hours and hard work to get the job done. His genuine compassion for people makes him a model leader and mentor to a growing workforce that has become family. These days, Art makes sure to always be grateful and celebrate life's wonderful gifts, like time with his family.
I play with my grandchildren. That is the greatest unwinding that I'm doing now. How I wish that all of us in our moments in life will always have that innocence of a child. I like the Apo because they exude innocence. They exude sincerity.
Through your work, what kind of nation are you trying to build for your children, grandchildren, at yung mga future generations of Filipinos?
Huwag na tayong lumayo sa mandato ng presidente. A nation that is comfortable. Having a comfortable life is not the job of one man. No one can do that. It must be communal. It must be universal. It must be countrywide.